freaking garbage. It's no news that I need a new one. Just kind of broke right now, so can't really afford a new one. So I got this charging, but that's pretty much useless. Whatever. I just need to throw that thing in the trash. I got my spare battery right here. It's fully charged. So instead of just waiting on a trickle charger, let's just go ahead and pop in my spare battery and we'll get this car in the garage right now. I got my spare battery installed. All of this works out because I was able to put her battery on the trickle charger and we'll let it sit there overnight or whatever it takes. The only reason why her battery is dead is because the car got towed in and they had the hazard lights on the entire way. So of course it drained the battery. The battery should be fine though. There we have it. Let's go into the garage. All right, so on the way into the garage, you can see we are in now. The check engine light was flashing. It's not flashing anymore because I turned the key off and restarted it, but it doesn't seem to be flashing, but the car is still misfiring. I could feel it and it just doesn't sound good. There's a loud ticking noise coming from the engine. This is a car that I worked on previously. I have a video on it. I'll put a card in the top right hand corner right here. It was a very controversial video because this car had a problem and I did what I had to do to fix it, and people had their opinions about it. So if you're interested, go ahead and check out that video up there. And the car's back again, guys. It belongs to my sister. It's a 2018. She has, there we go, 126.72. So like I said, it's a 2018. We are currently in 2022 late, so the car is not very old at all. She had someone look at it and it turns out there's a misfire on cylinder 2. They pulled out number 2 spark plug and it's completely gunked up with oil. Anyone who knows anything about these Hyundai engines knows where this thing is going. I've seen my fair share of these things, and usually at the end of the day, it's just a bad engine. There's too much oil getting past the oil control rings, the piston rings, and the oil is being burned off in the cylinder and it's contaminating the spark plug, which leads to the misfire. And it's a mess, guys. So I told my sister, hey, call Hyundai, you know, give them your VIN, see what happens. So they did all of that and they pretty much told her, go pound sand, go kick rocks. They said your car doesn't fall under the warranty or the recall claims. So yep, she's up shit's creek without a paddle. Let's see if this thing has a clear flood mode. Key on, accelerator pedal all the way to the floor, and let's crank. It does not. Let's see if we could unplug something real simple. I'd rather do the injectors, guys. Because the ignition cords are right on top, super easy to unplug. But I don't want the car spraying fuel into the cylinders, so I'd rather pull a fuse for the fuel injectors. So let me see if I can find that in the fuse panel here. I know I said I don't want the injector spraying, but this is just a quick test. This shouldn't take that long. So let's just go ahead and disconnect the ignition coils. All right, I got all of the coils unplugged. Let's go ahead and do a cranking test and see what it sounds like. That's the whole purpose of this test. But we're still going to do a relative compression test just so we could gather our information and have something to show to my sister. That's not good, guys. Do you hear that? It's like a mismatch rhythm or cadence. All right, so I went ahead and grabbed my scope and we're going to be doing the relative compression test right here at the battery because the starter cable is kind of a crap to get to. So I pretty much got everything connected. Let's go to automotive, engine test, relative compression, and we're going to go to AC voltage unsync. And the reason why we're doing AC is because we're doing it at the battery, and you got to have a AC coupling adapter attached. You can see I got mine attached already. So this thing's a 4-cylinder, so let's go ahead and adjust this. So we got 4 cylinders right there. We could pretty much hit the play button and all we have to do is take the scope into the car with us since my leads are long enough, and we'll just start cranking over the engine. Actually, before I do this test, I want to go ahead and try to clear out the fuel that was spraying into the cylinders from our cranking test. So I went ahead and reconnected the coils. We're just gonna let the engine run for like 10-15 seconds just to clear out that extra fuel that's in there. It's a good thing I decided to do that, to clear out that fuel, because it had a hard time starting. I had to crank this thing over a good like 5 different times, and I had to hold the accelerator pedal just to keep it running. And now it's running all by itself, so that's good enough. Let's go ahead and turn it off. All right, so I got everything set up right here. Turn the key to the on position. I'm gonna wait for this little thing right here to reset, and let's crank. Let's go ahead and pause this, and that already does not look good. Well, if you flip it the other way around, like upside down, think of those as like valleys, the large ones, and that's gonna be our dead miss. That's gonna be our cylinder that has no compression. Let's go ahead and hit analyze. It should show us 1 dead cylinder. Sure enough. Now, of course, we don't have a sync on this thing. We don't have a second channel going, so, you know, we don't know what cylinder this is, but they said it's cylinder 2, and we're going to go ahead and grab the scanner anyways and check the code. So it's kind of irrelevant. We know we have a dead cylinder here. So this is just more proof, and it's good information to have to show to anyone who's interested, or even just provide it to my sister and her husband so they could actually see this type of information. So I'm going to go ahead and take a picture of this. But this is exactly what I was expecting to see. So if you saw my last video when I was working on my sister's car, you know that I hollowed out the catalytic converter because it was restricted. It was essentially clogged, and it couldn't let the engine breathe. And it's why the car wouldn't go over like 20-30 miles per hour or whatever it was. And it's been, I don't know, guys, I would have to check my records, and I'll let you guys know. I'll put something on the screen here how long it's been, but it's been driving fine ever since. Okay, the only real complaint that my sister had that she kept mentioning, she said it kept smelling like exhaust fumes were getting into the cabin. It was really annoying that she has to constantly smell this. They went ahead and put another catalytic converter on this thing, right, because she wanted to remedy this problem she had. Well, the very next day after putting on a catalytic converter on this car, that's when this problem happened. So coincidence, I have no idea. Okay, but it's, yeah, I told her, so what was the reason of putting this catalytic converter on your car? Because this car does not have to do emissions where she lives. So it wasn't, you know, a point of emission testing. She said, well, I got tired of the smell coming into the cabin, and I told her, well, that could easily be an exhaust leak. You know, a hollowed out catalytic converter should not cause that. And then she said, well, I got tired of all the black smoke that was coming out of the back of my car. I was like, wait, what are you talking about? She said when she accelerates, this thing just throws a large cloud of black smoke out the back of the car. She said it's very embarrassing. And then that's when I told her, whoa. How come you didn't mention this to me before? Because even I could have told you that putting a catalytic converter on a car that has this large cloud of smoke coming out the back, the catalytic converter is not going to fix that issue, guys. That means there's an issue going on with the engine, and it's just shooting it out the exhaust. Okay, the catalytic converter is just a filter. It would just be a middleman. So the problem is happening before the catalytic converter, and that's the 2 reasons why she wanted a cat on this car. But had she told me both of these points before she spent money on a catalytic converter, I would have told her, don't waste your money, because it's not going to fix those issues. So I'm doing a full health report. I'm going to go ahead and let this finish up. If anyone's wondering why I sound weird, it's because I'm just barely getting over a like flu/fever. It's been going on for a few days, and today's the first day that I actually feel halfway decent. P0300 random misfire detected, which I'm not really too concerned with that, but right under it there goes our P0302, which is a cylinder 2 misfire. So guys, that's going to be our cylinder right there. The rest of these codes, we are not concerned with any of this crap. This is all irrelevant at this point. Cylinder 2, let's start digging into it. Let's go ahead and pull out that spark plug. I know there's some of you yelling at the screen right now saying, why don't you just take the time to check the ignition coil, swap it with number 1, see if the misfire changes, and blah, blah, blah. Guys, it's all a waste of time. Changing the coils, changing the spark plugs is a waste of time. You could throw as many parts as you want in this car. It's not going to fix it. We have low compression. So me wasting time to check to see if a ignition coil is good or bad right now is irrelevant. We have low compression. I just want to get the spark plug out of here so we can examine the tip of it and see if it's as bad as I'm expecting to see it. So I've already gone ahead and loosened the spark plug. It's the moment of truth. All right. and it's nowhere near as bad as I was expecting. I expected to see it like full of gunk and carbon, and that's just not the case here. Let me get you guys a better shot of this. If anything, it looked like it's just completely covered in fuel. Now, when they were over here dropping his car off, I questioned him about the spark plug, and if I remember correctly, he did say that he tried to clean off the spark plug and reinsert it. So it's a possibility that this thing was full of gunk and carbon, and he cleaned it off himself, and that's the reason why it looks like this. And they didn't drive the car over here, it got towed over here, so this is pretty much how he left it. So that's probably the reason why it doesn't look as bad as I was expecting. Let's see if we could get a camera to go inside of there and see what the inside of the cylinder looks like. So I was able to put a string on the end of my camera so I could pretty much pull the camera back while it's in cylinder and do a full 180. So this is one of the intake valves. Right here in the center is the fuel injector. Hopefully you guys see that at the top. This is the other intake valve. And this coming off to the left right here is our first exhaust valve. Sorry for the camera, just try to stay with me. So this right here is still the exhaust valve. It's one of them, okay? And I'm trying to get the camera to rotate and go to the left. That's going to be our other exhaust valve. This is why it's so important to have the proper tools, and I'm just trying to get by with what I got using a string inside of there. So that's it. I really didn't notice anything looking back at this footage. Everything looked just real nasty and cruddy to me. So hopefully you guys were able to see that footage going inside the cylinder with a camera. And guys, it's nothing fancy. It's just a little cheapo thing that I bought off of like eBay or Amazon. It gets the job done, but of course you don't get all the bells and whistles of being able to control the camera while it's in there. So does this cylinder have low compression because it's losing its compression through the piston rings? Or is it through the valves? I guess the only way to find out is to do a leak down test. So that's where we're going to go next with this. It's actually 2 days later. Got a few things going on here. Number one, with me being sick, I just haven't been feeling well. And number two, I've had to go to court for the past 2 days because back in 2018, yes, 4 years ago, I saw a attempted murder right behind my garage. So I had to go into court to actually testify. So yeah, that's been fun. So I got my leak down tester out here, and I'm trying to find when this cylinder is on its compression stroke. I even put like a small balloon at the end right here. Basically, once the piston is trying to come up and it's trying to create compression, it should inflate the little balloon I got at the end, you know, once it's threaded into where the spark plug goes. And guys, that cylinder has such little compression that it won't even inflate a balloon. That's how bad it is. Something as simple as the balloon test kind of failed. What I like to do is just put the leak down tester on the engine, get the air pumping into it, and then I manually rotate the engine. You can see I got my large ratchet right here. So I manually turn the engine over, and I just keep turning it until this gauge starts to build up pressure, indicating that it's on its compression stroke, because the only way this gauge can build up pressure is if the in-cylinder pressure is actually rising. Unfortunately, I've rotated this thing all the way around completely more than once, and I can't get this thing to go past 10, which means the leak is just so bad that it just doesn't want to do anything. But I'm going to go ahead and rotate this entire engine over, and we could actually hear when the intake valves are open, because we're going to hear all the air rushing out of the throttle body. You can see I got the throttle body propped open with a screwdriver. So you could actually hear when the intake valves open and close. So let me get that for you guys. Let's start rotating this engine. Okay, the intake valve just started to open up. Hopefully you guys can hear that. I would say that's almost completely open for the intake valves. And I could actually feel all of the compressed air coming out of there. So let's just keep rotating it. Sounds like the valve is starting to close.
Okay, seems like the intake valves are completely closed now. You can't hear anything, and there's no more pressure coming out of here. Let's go to the rear of the car. Now, I don't know at this point if it's on its compression stroke. All we know is that the intake valves are closed. But if we come over to the exhaust, ton of pressure coming out of there. And here's a little bit of a spoiler alert for you guys. I've already gone ahead and rotated this engine. I come and do a small tweak, a small rotation of the engine, and go check it back and forth, back and forth. I kept doing that to see at any point if air stops coming out the exhaust, and it doesn't. No matter where you're at in this cycle of the engine, there's always air exiting that exhaust back there. So that tells me that we're losing all of our compression through the exhaust valves. And that kind of makes sense on why this car keeps clogging. Well, I don't want to say if the second catalytic converter is clogged for sure. I don't know that yet. But definitely the first one was clogged. And that's because whatever is supposed to be going on inside of the cylinder, you know, the actual combustion process, isn't being contained. And it's just dumping all that like raw fuel into the catalytic converter, which essentially melts and damages them. But this just means that, hey, maybe this thing could get away with just taking the head off and, you know, fixing whatever's wrong. Whether it needs new valves, whether the valves just need to get cleaned and lapped. But I see that as a win. If this were my car, I'd feel a lot happier to find out that all I have to do is pull off the head and kind of refurbish it and then put it back together. Hey, it's a lot better than, oh, your car needs a whole new engine. You get what I'm saying? All right, so I talked to my sister and her husband, and the game plan here is to fix this car as cheap as possible. She's going to be upside down with this car because she still owes $7 grand on it. So definitely taking a loss here. But, you know, a car that's running is a lot easier to sell than a car that isn't running. So that's why it has to get fixed, because the interior looks perfect. The body looks perfect. This engine has to be running pretty, you know, good for 2018. So we have to get it fixed, and we're going to try to do it as cheap as possible, seeing that she's going to trade in the car. For example, if we're going to pull the head off, that means the timing chain has to come off, right? All the timing components. At over 100,000 miles, it's ideal to change all of that stuff, right? Change the timing chain, the guides, and blah, 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 anything associated with that. But seeing that she's just going to get rid of it, we want to try to minimize how much money we put into it. So unfortunately, the timing chain that comes off is going to be the same timing chain that's going on. Of course, the head gasket has to get changed. The head bolts have to get changed. And any other little gaskets that come in the head gasket kit are going to get changed. But we're not going to go out of our way, okay? So it's going to get the same timing chain, timing guides, all that stuff. Remember, the name of the game here is as cheap as possible. And fix it just so it runs good, and then get rid of it. So it's a few days later, and we actually got in all the parts that I ordered for my sister's Hyundai. Guys, isn't this the cutest little exhaust valve you ever seen? Look at that. So I only ordered 2 exhaust valves. It comes 2 in one box. The reason for that, we're only going to replace the 2 exhaust valves on the cylinder that's not holding compression. And the reason for that is I'd hate to take off the cylinder head to find out that it's not simply just carbon built up on the face of the valve, and that's why it's not sealing, but it turns out that one of the valves is cracked, and that's why it's not sealing. So 2 exhaust valves, they were pretty cheap, so I figured why not? That's probably the best way to go with this. And guys, I know some of you aren't going to be happy, but the CRX is coming out the garage, so I can put my sister's Hyundai right here. I know, I'm going to get all the hate mail and the thumbs down and say, why aren't you working on the CRX? You said you would work on it. Guys, it's just, my sister's car was unexpected, okay? It's just unfortunate, okay? And I'm trying to help out family. That's all it comes down to. I don't want to put her car right here because I still am working on other people's cars. And if I were to put her car right here, it's taking up good, valuable space. I don't know how long her car is going to be here. I don't know if it'll be taken apart for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And honestly, I'd hate to have her car right here taking up good space and I have to turn down other jobs that I'm actually making money off of, or I could potentially make money off of, to put my sister's car right here, only to find out that once we get the cylinder head off, there's other problems that need to get addressed. You get what I'm saying? And the car could be here for a while. So the smartest thing to do is just to pull the CRX out since it still runs, park it outside, bring her car in, and I'm thinking of pulling it straight in like this, so the front end of the car over here. That way we have good access to the timing chain side of the engine. And yeah, so I think that's what I'm doing. As you can see, I already started clearing out everything in front of the CRX. I started moving everything to this side just so we could get the CRX out and get the Hyundai in. So let me go ahead and get that done. Got the CRX out the garage, and it was just as simple as putting my little jump starter on it. Started right up. That's what I love about the CRX. It doesn't matter if it's a 1991. It starts right up every single time. I got it parked out there idling, and yeah, just let it run for a few minutes since it's been sitting for a few months without running. And I'm gonna go ahead and pull in the Hyundai right now. Maybe do a little bit of sweeping first. So I got the Hyundai in the garage. It's pretty much as far over as I want to get it. You can see in front right here, I got plenty of walking and working space in front of the engine. On this side, you can see I have just enough space to get into the driver door if I need to, so that's all good. Over here, it's not ideal, but it'll work. It's enough space to get a car in, and I can work right here. Granted, of course, now I have to clean up this mess that I moved around, but this is enough working space if I need to get other cars in, which I do have other cars lined up for like this weekend and stuff. So this is why it's absolutely critical that I didn't want the Hyundai right here. So I think pulling the CRX out to put the Hyundai right here was the right call. All right, so the car has been sitting for a little while, so I think it's time to start taking it apart. Of course, this is not going to be a DIY, guys. This is just me bringing you guys along for this repair, and hopefully we get a good video out of it. Seems like it's going to be a good one. So I'm going to start with the basics, you know, simple things, removing the air intake box. Might even pull out the battery. Not really sure if I have to do that. But then I'm going to remove the serpentine belt and the intake manifold, and probably the alternator at the same time. So I got the air intake system off of the car. You can see all the pieces right there on the ground, and it opened up all of this right here. I disconnected the negative battery post. I don't think I'm going to remove the battery, even though it's just sitting here. All I have to do is remove the positive and I could get it out the way, but I don't see it being in the way, and I really don't see any benefit from removing it. So I got the serpentine belt loose, but I can't get it completely off because it's still wrapped around the tensioner right there. This looks like it might be one of those cars where you gotta remove the tensioner just to get the belt off. I hope I'm wrong, but that's what it's looking like. And before I remove the belt, I actually loosened the 4 bolts for the water pump pulley. So these 4 bolts right here are now loose. And the reason for that is because it looks like the pulley sits in front of the timing cover. So I may have to remove this pulley to get to that timing cover. So it's why it's a good idea to loosen them before you remove that belt. And I did make that mistake, guys. I had to take this belt on and off twice because me, like an idiot, I forgot to loosen those 4 bolts before I took the belt off. So that was fun. Anyway, with that done, I think I want to focus on this intake manifold. All right, so I needed to come from underneath the engine to get to a few things. So I had to remove this belly pan. And Hyundai, tell me, why do you need 19 fasteners to hold down a belly pan? The shit makes no sense. It's crazy. I don't know the name of these things, but I found it underneath my sister's car. This thing is freaking huge. It's practically a pterodactyl. So I got the intake manifold off of the car. See it right here. I believe we have new gaskets for this. The throttle body, I just left it on the car for now because I didn't want to open up the cooling system right now because it has coolant running through the throttle body. And I have to deal with that at some point, but I just didn't want to deal with it right now, so I left the throttle body in the car. This thing came off, I don't know, I would say it was a pain in the butt, but basically I unbolted everything that was holding it down, and I disconnected everything that was attached to it, and it actually came out on my very first try, first swoop. Usually things like this, you go to pull it out and you find out something else is attached to it, but I got lucky this time. I covered all my bases and it came right out. But there is a lot of crap in its way. And one thing I was interested in seeing was the valves on this thing, because this is a direct injected engine, and these things tend to have problems because a ton of carbon and residue from oil and all kinds of crap like that builds up on the valves, and this is no exception. You can see how nasty that looks. It's definitely not the worst I've seen, but it's still pretty bad, guys.